right now. And I was like, yeah, good. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to thank everyone for coming tonight. We did not have an executive session tonight, so there were no votes taken. At this time, it's now time for open forum. Is there anyone that would like to speak? All right, so hearing none, we are going to move on to oral reports, starting with the school committee. Who would like to go first? Alex?
Just a quick update on just some meetings that we're going to be having. The Nutrition Committee, the Health and Wellness Committee will meet next Monday at 4 p.m. via Zoom. The Diversity and Equity Team will be meeting next Wednesday at 3:45 via Zoom. And the Special Education Advisory Committee will also be meeting next Wednesday at the Peer School from 6 to 7, and there will also be a Zoom option. Thank you.
Diane?
Yeah, I just want to give kudos to the Narragansett Peer School, the chorus of the Narragansett Peer School. They performed the national anthem at the University of Rhode Island basketball game last Saturday, and they did a very nice job. So kudos to them. And also, I noticed in the high school report that our high school was recognized as having the best attendance in the state for the first week in January. So that was a very nice honor, too. So I hope our other schools will be recognized at some point for that same honor.
So I have two updates. So Jen and I both attended a meeting at the Peer School last night, and then I have a building committee update to give. Jen, do you want to give the update from last night, or do you want me to do that? It's up to you. It doesn't matter at all. Like, I can do the building committee first, and then do you want to do that?
You can do it. You can do it. That's fine.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'll start with the building committee. So as part of our budget process, we meet as a building committee where it's got residents, it's got school employees. Justin and I serve on that from the school committee. And we look at the long-term capital plan, really looking at 5 years out. We look at the projects that were scheduled to be completed this year, what is forecasted for next year, and really kind of go through that very specifically at each building. So that was a good preliminary meeting with the building committee. And then the full school committee will discuss that at one of our budget workshops. And then we'll hear it again when Pete presents the full budget to us. And then I'm hoping that we will have a capital reserve meeting with the town council this budget season as well. We'll go through that again. So it'll go through several iterations, really looking at our long-term capital plan, how to maintain and protect our assets. And so the full school committee will be hearing more detail about that in a couple upcoming meetings at the budget workshop and at the full budget presentation. Town council will hear it at the capital reserve meeting, and then when Pete presents our budget to the town council. So more to come on the building committee. And then last night, Jen and I attended a great meeting that Dr. Cummings facilitated at the Peer School, really talking a lot about the grade 4 to 5 transition. So we know when the kids transition between buildings from 4 to 5 and again from 8 to 9, that's a critical time for them. And so last night's meeting was kind of part 2, a really invested, great group of stakeholders. So lots of teachers from, I think, all 3 buildings I saw there last night. Administrator from the elementary school, the Peer School, Gail was there, Pete was there. Lots of teachers, lots of great parents who are very involved, who have kids in multiple buildings. And really, we did some small group kind of breakout work and then circled back as a whole group to really talk about what is currently being planned by the district right now for a grade 4 to 5 transition. What other ideas do the stakeholders had? Pete shared an article and some of the research on the importance of transitions that had some good strategies in it as well. So a lot of good dialogue and discussion, a great focus group there. and we'll see, which of those strategies kind of get implemented and tweaked, and more to come on that. And so I don't know, Pete, if there's anything else you want to add, or if in your superintendent's report you want to add anything else.
I'll just add really quickly right now, I was really grateful for the level of investment and dialogue that we had. There were some great ideas from parents and really incorporating some of the needs of parents in the community right now. And so it gave us some great starting points for some of the work that we're going to try to do. So our next steps is to kind of come together as a building-based team or teams at the Narragansett, at the elementary school and peer school, flesh out some of the ideas, bring them back to this group, and we'll do a follow-up meeting around what the actionable steps are going to be, and then we'll continue to seek feedback and seek ideas from this group as we try to put some of these pieces into action. So it was really a great thing to see.
Great, thanks. And Jen, is there anything else you wanted to highlight from last night's meeting?
I just want to say thank you to Pete and the administration for really listening and putting into action. Like you did say, it was high-level discussion. This was our second meeting, breakout group, and it's really awesome to see as a parent and an educator and on the school committee to see work like that done in the community. So it gives me like just huge hope of just how we can move forward in any kind of issue that we ever have. It was really pretty awesome. So thank you.
Is it a set group, or is it open to anybody that wants to come to like the follow-ups?
Certainly, if people have interest in joining, they're more than welcome to, and should just reach out to me, and we can put them and start including them into the list. This was a group that had originally been interested in looking at where our grade 5 is, and so that transitioned into this group, but it's certainly open to anyone that would be interested in joining.
All right, thank you. So any other reports to give? We're all set? Okay. All right, so Maya, our student representative, could not be here tonight. She did submit a written report that's in the packet. I'm happy to give a couple highlights. So Maya is still looking to try to get input from people about the schedules and also timing of some real important milestones in senior year. So at the last meeting, she talked about the timing of the senior paper. So we know that senior thesis paper is a really important component of their graduation requirement. And so it's always tricky to try to figure out, the timing for that, because certainly their senior project, they work on throughout the year. They get their mentor hours. They do their big presentation in the spring. The senior project, certainly pros and cons, because the fall can be a very busy time for people that are applying early decision and early action for college. Some students wait till a little bit later, and do the regular deadlines in January and February. So really tricky. In the spring, their work is really going to amp up on their senior project work. In the fall, some of them are busy getting their college deadlines in. So it's really tricky to try to keep the kids meaningfully engaged in senior year without overwhelming them. So it's always that balance. So I think it's great that Maya's going to kind of do a survey with the seniors and try to get some more feedback. And I'm sure she'll share that with the high school principal and try to kind of figure that out. Senior year is a busy time of year. So they can, have some dialogue, discussion, get some input from the stakeholders, the teachers, the kids, and they can kind of figure out if they want to shift the time on that. And then her other feedback was about, some of the classes that may need a double block. So I know there's been a lot of work that's done on the schedule. So some of the lab classes will have a double block. So one of the questions Maya had was about like AP art. So when you have an art class and you're spending time with setup and cleanup, certainly could have benefits to have a double block. So I'd be more interested in hearing from the high school principal about, now that they're, in year one of the schedule, are there any other classes that they kind of have figured out could benefit from that double block? And, that's certainly good to get input, because sometimes you focus on science and labs or something without thinking about other classes that could also benefit from that. I'm sure some of the CTE classes, whether it's ag science or something, could also, I'm sure there's a lot of classes that may benefit from that. So it's always good to kind of get input, and then they can, again, figure out how they want to tweak that for next year.
Yes, and Chris and I actually talked about that today. That process is underway. So Chris has been talking with students and with teachers. Students are actually selecting their classes, have been selecting those classes. So that data is going to be run within the next week. So we'll kind of know which classes students are selecting for their electives. And then we are working with both the students and with teachers around things like what Maya brought up around either labs or frequency of meeting or different pieces on how we're really implementing a new schedule. Year one, has been successful, but there are always things that you learn when you're kind of putting in something new. And so I think year two will be even smoother as we start to figure out the particular quirks of this schedule in this size of student population. So the hard part about, high school leadership is that every schedule is unique to a degree, right? Because of the offerings and the time constraints and the number of students. And so they're working through the kinks of that. We do have a consultant coming back to work with us in the spring on the schedule, so hopefully everything will go smoothly.
All right, sounds good. So we are back to you, Pete, superintendent's report.
So the main part of our report tonight is Gail talking about the accountability results. So those came out about a week and a half ago. So again, we use these results as feedback, and that I think is a really important perspective to have as we go over these. So what happens is that this is really a kind of pulling together the data from multiple sources to give kind of a high-level overview of what's happening in the schools. And so as Gail goes over the pieces, please know that we take these outcomes very seriously. We look at them with our faculty, we look at them with our administrative staff, and then we use that to make changes and make improvements or to further strengthen pieces. I will say, and Gail will highlight this, I'm appreciative to the committee for the efforts that they have put forth. You're starting to see some of the outcomes of those investments. So our math scores are on the upswing after many years of going in the wrong direction. And so that's the credit, A, to the resources and the leadership of the committee, and B, to the good work of Gail, of Linda McQuaid, who's our math coach and department leader, and we've made a lot of changes in the way that we're working there. We do see, some reduction in our chronic absenteeism. It's still high, and so we're continuing to work there. And I don't want to steal all of Gail's thunder, but we have room for growth as well, right? And so one point of context I will give to you is that when you look at the overall results from the state, our schools did pretty well. Not as well as we want them to, but they did pretty well. And in some areas, we have some very small tweaks to make to get to that next level. So for example, we may have missed gotten 2 points instead of 3 by a small percentage, right? So we're continuing to grow. I'll hand it off to Gail with that.
Okay, thank you. So a couple months ago, I guess, I came and gave you what the RICAS scores were. So what happens now is the accountability system at RIDE comes out with our ratings, our star ratings. So I'm going to try to go through this as quickly as I can. My slide deck is already almost 30 slides, so I'll try not to get too into the weeds, but I wanted you to walk away at least, knowing what these results are about. So what's new and what's different this year with the accountability results? So one really big piece of news is that the science scores now count towards our accountability. The science assessments are given in grades 5, 8, and 11. What's interesting about the grade 5 scores is they connect themselves to the peer school and the elementary school. Because if you think about it, most of those grade 5 assessments are based on what they did K4 and then 3/4 of the year of grade 5. Although the science scores count towards the accountability system, there is no achievement scores associated with science because they're not given every year. They're only given in 5, 8, and 11. So that's new this year. Science is part of the accountability. Second one really doesn't apply to us. It's schools that have been identified as needing a lot of support. They're now identifying them every 2 years. And this year now, the school LEA accountability results, which is us as a district, are published at the same time as the school results. As far as...
Gail,
Yeah.
are you okay if we do quick questions
Sure.
as we go along
Yeah.
instead of waiting there?
Sure.
Okay.
I have one before we move on. With the adjusted cut scores for student and teacher absenteeism that they adjusted, does that mean they eliminated that 0 if a student
They
doesn't
can,
take the
so
test?
I'm sorry, I missed that part. So what's different is that with COVID, they had adjusted the cut scores for absenteeism. They've readjusted them, but they're still different than what they were pre-COVID.
But if a student doesn't take it, does it still count as a 0?
Oh, I know what you're talking. If a student doesn't take the score, we do not receive a score for that student.
It is counted as a 0 up to 95%. So if you are below 95% participation, right, every student that does not take the test is counted as a 0 or the lowest score possible until you get to the 95%, because the goal is to have 95% of your students take the
test.
exam, right? Above 95%, students who don't take it, it's just not counted for or against, okay, if that makes sense?
And Gail, on the first slide, can you tell us either what CSI stands for or what it means when you said the change to the biennial CSI identifications?
Those are schools that were identified as needing like targeted assistance from RIDE, and they used to identify them yearly, and now they've decided to do it every other year. Yeah. Thank you. That's what that was, yeah. So as far as how does RIDE determine what our accountability is, they look at achievement, so we get 11 points for that, 4 for math, 4 for ELA, and 3 for science. Our growth, we get 6 points total for our growth, and what they do is they look at how the students have grown from one year to the next. Do they have low growth? Do they have typical growth? Do they have high growth? And you get different points based on which of those 3 they get. So that's how we get the growth scores. ELL, our students who take the access assessments are counted in there, but our ELL population is so small, it's not even an indicator for us. For the high school, they look at graduation rates. For the high school, they look at the Diploma Plus measures. And then school quality and student success has to do with, did we exceed expectations in ELA, in math, in absenteeism, and then they look at our student suspension rate as well to see how those rates are compared to the state. So as far as these star ratings and what they mean, so the highest you can get is a 5, and that means you have strong performance on all indicators. And then you can see how it goes down with a 4, generally strong, a 3, some areas of weakness, a 2, weakness at the overall school level, and then 1 would be the lowest performance in terms of achievement and growth or graduation. One thing about these star ratings that we try to point out every year is when you look at how a school has scored, your lowest area determines your star rating. So if we had all high scores in every area but, 1, and that one was a 3, that would be our rating, even though our other areas may have been 4s or 5.
Why don't they take an average? I
I
mean, that
don't
doesn't
know.
seem fair.
So when they originally designed the system, I remember them explaining it, it was the belief that you're only as good as your weakest area. And so that was the philosophy in the design of it. And so that's why you are only rated as high as your weakest area.
So I thought you might be interested just to see the star ratings across the state. So in this chart, you can see, for example, for the elementary schools that received 1 star, there were 8 in the state. And there were 10 middle schools that achieved 1, and so on from that chart. So our elementary school received 4 stars, and I want to give a shout out to NES because they went from 3 stars to 4 stars from last year to this year. So you can see for the elementary 4 stars, there were 19 elementary schools that achieved 4 stars, and then you can go down the list to see how middle and high schools did. Our middle school achieved 3 stars, and our high, which is what they achieved last year, and our high school achieved 4 stars, which is what they were rated last year as well. So this is an interesting chart to look at if you just wanted to compare us to the rest of the state by our 3 levels.
Gail, how does a school get no rating? That last column.
I'm not really sure unless it's just not a traditional school, if it's just not categorized as a state school. Pete, I'm not sure if you know more about that.
You know, I don't know the answer to that, Diane, but we can find out for you.
This is just what I just went over, our elementary, middle, and high school, what the stars we got, and then the reason our kudo areas were achievement and growth. So this slide shows us as a whole. So this is not by school. So the way I arrange this slide deck is I'll show you as a district, and then I'll show you as a school, okay, how we got the ratings in certain areas. So this is our Narragansett LEA Accountability of Performance. So you can see, for example, for performance, what the minimal possible points were with 3. We achieved 7 out of 11 points. For growth, we achieved 4 out of 6. The ELL, as I mentioned before, it wasn't applicable. We just don't have a big enough population for that. Graduation rate, 4 to 5 points. Diploma plus, 5 out of 6. And school quality and student success, 13 out of 15 points. So that was us as a district. Here is us as a district for ELA. We achieved 3 points out of 4 points for ELA. And here we have by school. This is for ELA, English Language Arts. Our elementary school achieved 3 out of 4 points, our peer school 2 out of 4, and our high school 3 out of 4. That was English Language Arts. Now remember, for the elementary and middle school, they're looking at the RICAS. For the high school, they're looking at SATs, and they're looking at growth from PSAT to SAT. Okay. Then we have Narragansett achievement in math. So we achieved 2 out of 4 points for math. This is one of those areas that Pete mentioned that we just missed getting to the next level. And by school, our elementary school had 3 points, middle and high had 2 points. Science was new for us this year as far as accountability. We achieved 2 points in science. And here you can see that all 3 schools achieved those 2 points. And the 5th grade, as I said, went both to the elementary school and the middle school. So after achievement, they look at growth. So in the high school, they're looking at PSAT to SAT growth. In the middle school and the elementary school, they're looking at the RICAS growth by students. Once again, giving points to whether they had low growth, average growth, or high growth. So our growth in ELA as a district, we received 2 out of 3 points. And then each of our schools received 2 points for growth. That's for English Language Arts.
Can I just have a
Sure.
quick question? I know you explained to me in the past about growth. Would you mind just giving a quick sound bite about the measurement of growth and, a lot of things are taken into consideration, for example, the size of our school.
Yep, so the size of our school, so for example, the way that it distributes for us is roughly a third, a third, a third. A third of students are having low growth, a third are having typical growth, and a third are having high growth. We obviously would prefer that kind of curve to having all students making typical growth or high growth. One of the factors that is challenging for us is that for many of our students who are achieving at a high level, they are achieving at a high level, but then from year to year are deemed as having low growth because it's much harder, right, to, let's say we put it on a 100-point scale, to move from a 92 to a 96 than it is to move from, let's say, a 75 to an 85, right? And so this is not true of all students, but our numbers are so small that often, if we have 20 kids that are achieving in a cohort that are achieving at a really high level, and then the growth measure is that you have to increase X percentage points to be termed typical or high growth, and you match your score from the previous year, or maybe you even go down a little bit, right? Then if you go down a little bit, you're deemed low growth, right? If you match it, you're deemed kind of typical growth. And really to get the extra high points to meet the bar, which I appreciate the goal of this, which is to meet the high growth, to meet the 3-point level, so to speak, you have to have, at least about half of your kids in that high growth area and fewer kids in that low or typical growth. If every student made typical growth, you'd have a 1.0 and you wouldn't make the 3-point bar, right? And so you're really looking for more students to do that. Now that is something that, as I mentioned before, right, that is something that is great feedback for us. So one of the things that Gail and her team is doing is really looking for those students that, for example, met standard but had low growth, right? And what more can we do for students to make sure that they're continuing to grow at the pace that we want them to? And so a lot of this has to do with data digs, right? And identifying the right data so that we can individualize instruction for students who may, be having typical growth but have the potential for having high growth, or may be high achievers that are tagged with a low growth that we know could probably do more, and so kind of giving them the opportunities to do that.
Excellent. Thank you for walking us through that. I think that really helps. Thank you.
Yeah, and we take the growth really seriously because, you want the kids to grow. And for example, one of the projects we're working on is looking at students who participated in either our summer tutoring or are participating in interventions, and looking at what type of growth they have, not only on the RICAS, but either on iReady or IXL, mostly iReady, to see if the interventions are working. And if they are, they should have at least typical or high growth, and that's great. But if they aren't, then we can go back and say, if it's not working, we need to change the intervention. So there's a lot of great data that comes from this that helps us in our strategic planning.
I was just going to say that when I look at education and scores and compare them over the last few decades, we also have to understand that in a classroom situation with the law change in 2001 with No Child Left Behind, teachers are having to take, probably not even when you were younger, but when I was younger before that law was passed, we had low, high, medium classes where all of the same rate learners were in there. And so a teacher could really focus on maybe the issues in one part of either a lower learner in one area or a higher learner in another area. In today's classrooms, it's not like that. So the teachers really have to be able to distinguish every student and every level, every class, which I feel is a very, very, very difficult task to do. So maintaining growth in my head, especially through COVID, is actually a really, really, really high achievement as I see. The other thing I just wanted to mention was, because I have 2 kids in elementary, and I did get their RICAS scores, and I was able to see how, it compares to school, and then to the school, and then to the state, I think. And you're right. Like, for one of my children in their grade, there are a lot of high performers in that grade. And so I could see if you took, 40% of those kids in that grade, they can't really grow that much more. They missed like 1.
Oh, we know.
So, I mean, what do you do with that? You're looking at next year, those 40%, if they miss 1, they're not growing. And if they miss any more in the higher level, they're actually falling. So I do think the system is definitely broken in some sense. I don't think it's a real achievement of what growth is going on. But personally, that's from my view. But I mean, obviously, this is the system, and
It is, and so that's why we like to, as you're saying, this is one data point amongst many, right? This is certainly an accountability system that we have, and we have, Gail and I have both given feedback to RIDE around this point. But, as a committee, you all look at many data points. This is one of them, right? And so what we also look at are things like other formative assessments that we have throughout the year. How are students growing? What are the things that we get from survey works? What is the feedback that we get from parents? So this is one of the things that we look at, and is a great starting place for us. But for example, one of the things that we are very conscious of is making sure that we are providing programming for our students who are at a higher level and ready to push themselves more, right? And so how do we continue to provide opportunities for that? You see that at the high school with the growth of our AP classes, right? So we've added around 10 AP classes in the last 4 years. And so we're continuing to try to do that. And we're continuing to think really hard around how do we do that at the elementary and the middle level.
Okay. I think I left off on math. So as a district, our math growth score points was 2. And then by school, you can see elementary had 2, high school had 3. That was great news for us. And middle school had 2 growth points, and this is out of 3. So for the high school to have 3 out of 3 growth, that is a huge celebration for us. I just wanted to definitely shout that out.
so that was, I'm sorry, PSAT to SAT. Okay.
ELL, we did not have enough English language learners who took the access to report this in the proficiency indicator. Graduation rate, we have a very high graduation rate. Our rate is 92%. So we got 4 points for that. We needed to have 95% to get the 5 points.
Right, and in this, and Melissa knows this really well, one of the pieces that is a flaw in the formula is that we have students within our cohorts, I don't want to personally identify anyone, who we are obligated to educate until they are 22, right? So students who go into our 18 to 22 program after they leave the high school, they are not counted as graduates. And so because of that, because our cohort is so small, even a couple of students who go on to our 18 to 22 program are counted as non-graduates, and therefore that dings our graduation rate. And so we've provided this feedback to RIDE several times. They are examining the formula, and so we're hoping for a fix on that.
I'm interested that you just said that, because the graduation points by school, we received 5 out of 5 if we were just counting the students in our high school. Commissioner Seal, these are students who had proficiency in both ELA and math before graduation. We received 2 points for that. And our post-secondary, we received all 3 points for that.
And so I just want to highlight this one because this one I think is really important. So this is the number of students who graduate with at least one AP class, or who graduate with a certificate, professional certificate from one of our CTE programs, or who earn another credential, for example, a world language credential. And so, you know, there's a lot to be proud of here because you're really looking at a large number of our students who are graduating from high school with college credit, with you know, AP classes under their belt, with an industry certificate under their belt. And so that's the vast majority of our students, and that's going to just continue to increase. So we're very pleased with that.
Absenteeism, this is a statewide issue. I did read the article you sent. And when the commissioner met with all the superintendents and other central office staff, she talked a lot about how this is a statewide issue. It's not just a Narragansett issue. We had 18.1% of our students were chronically absent during the 22-23 school year. That means they were absent at least 10% of the school days within a month. Within the year, sorry. Within a month. So that was kind of high for us, but it's the same, you know, throughout the state. We have some good news at the high school, as Diane pointed out a few moments ago, with our attendance rate being great for the first couple of weeks of January at the high school. We hope that continues.
Right.
So
we are, again, we have a lot of work to do here, right? It's a statewide problem. We are on the lower end of districts in the state in terms of issues with chronic absenteeism. It's higher than we want it to be. We're continuing to work on it. We have attendance committees within each building. We have some district-wide warning systems that we meet as a district. We do a lot of pieces with this. Our school social worker does a lot of work with us. But we are trending in the right direction. And in comparison to other districts, both in the region and statewide, you know, again, we're not the lowest, but we're, you know, on the lower end.
Peter, you mentioned that it's a statewide thing. Has the state come up with any reasons they think is causing this?
You know, it's interesting you asked that, Justin. I was just reading an article today that it's very difficult to pinpoint any one reason. There's a lot. For families, it's very individualized, right, about why students might not be coming to school. Sometimes it's access to transportation. Sometimes it is related to a family situation. Sometimes it has to do with anxiety for students. So every child is different, but the aggregate of that is really an epidemic of not coming to school. And so the state has really put a lot of energy into this. They really are working hard. I'm a part of the statewide superintendents association. I actually am the chair of our professional learning committee. We're working very closely with the Annenberg Institute at Brown to really look at the research and create some statewide strategies with the support of RIDE to really start to address this. And so we're going to be working with Annenberg. We're one of the districts that's participating to get the most current research and apply that to what's happening in our district.
I had a quick question. So working in a school, I see excused absences and unexcused absences. Or do they both count towards this?
Thank you for asking that. They do both count. And so,
So, for example, if I'm a careful family and I test my daughter for COVID and she has COVID, I send in a doctor's note, she misses 5 days.
so for the school, we count that as excused and will kind of certainly support families. We support them no matter what. For the state, they do not differentiate between excused and unexcused, and absence is an absence in their view.
Okay, so that could skew things a little bit more.
Absolutely.
The other thing I want to bring up, and I'm going to be very unpopular to all the people that are here right now, and I'm a parent. I do see that, when I went back in school, we never took vacations during the school year. And there are a lot of families that take vacations during the school year. However, I do want to say that our culture has changed. And if there are children whose family lives in a different country and they don't get to see, whatever, there should be a way to, I would think if they're keeping their learning going, there should be a way to account that that learning is still going even though they're away. Because just how our culture is, how can you say? I mean, you have to live your life too, right? So I don't know, that was just one thing that I think specifically, especially in Rhode Island with our demographic here, I think that affects that.
So we do work with families as much as possible, and there is certainly a difference in going to a ski vacation, for example, during the middle of school versus going and visiting family if you are an immigrant family, for example. And so we try to work with families as best we can to partner with them to make sure students are staying caught up and are staying on track, for their learning at whatever grade level they happen to be in. I think the challenge can often be for families that it sneaks up on you, right? And so, you may have, a week of, let's say, COVID in the fall, and then you catch the flu, in the winter, and you may, have another illness in the spring, and before you know it, you're at 15 or 16 days, right? And so that really adds up for students. There's lots of research that, and we have seen it in our own district data, that students who miss that 10% mark really are significantly behind. And so for whatever reason it might be. And so we try to differentiate as best we can, right? And make sure that we're supporting families in that, but absolutely I agree with your point.
Can I just add one more comment? Sure. I'm on the Health and Wellness Committee. We do some really incredible work. Obviously, when I see chronic absenteeism, one red flag that comes up is, the ongoing mental health crisis. And this is all around the country. It's not just statewide. Chronic absenteeism is all over the country. And that was relevant in this article. And I was just wondering, with all of the various possibilities of like social anxiety or anything along those lines of why students may not be coming to school. At what point is intervention from the school side taken? Is it after like a number of absences? Okay.
So we do it at two levels. So one is a building-based team that starts to look at students day to day, and then we also meet a couple times per quarter as a district team. So we have an early warning system where we looked at certain data points. Absences are one of them. Another one is, for example, discipline data. We look at achievement, grades, right? How are they doing? And we really look, there's a lot of research that says if you can kind of look at these in the aggregate, so you may have a student that has, let's say, 10 absences, is not quite there, but they might not be doing well in 2 core classes, and they have a couple of discipline issues. Like, those are indicators that a student is really in need of help, right? And so we look at those as a team. One of the great things about being in Narragansett is that when we look as a district team, we really can look at a student history across all 3 schools. And so we don't end up repeating interventions that may not have worked, and we're able to kind of reinvigorate interventions that may have worked with a student in the past, right? And so we work with that as a team. But we really do look at those patterns. And so let's say, for example, we have a high school student that is consistently not coming in on Mondays, right? It may not flag something quickly, but the team at the high school looks at that and says, oh, this student hasn't been here the last 4 Mondays. What's going on, right? And so they'll then kind of work with the student and the family. So they do pay attention to that level of data.
Thank you, and I really appreciate you walking me through that. Just doing research, you get concerned because people build these habits for life, and we want everyone to come out of their educational experience ready and to tackle the world with whatever they may face. And just add on to your explanation. After you've gone through that, do you reach out to parents? Do you have conferences with the parents and students?
We do. We work with families. Unfortunately, there are some students who end up going into the truancy system, right? And so, if we have a student who we have, tried to do a number of interventions with, and sometimes, the family is really working hard to get a student to school, but it's beyond their capacity to get the students to school, right? Things might be going on with that family. We do have the support of the family court system through a truancy court, and so they work with us really closely and with our school social worker, Rebecca Angel, and so we, go to that next level of intervention when we need to.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, just a couple more slides, I promise. These could be quick. One is suspension. So we received all of our points for our suspension across all 3 schools. That has to do with how many students received in or out of school suspension. And then the points that we get for exceeding, this is how many, the percent of students who scored at the top level, which is level 4 on the RICAS, on the state assessments. We had, for our ELA, we had 3 out of 3 points, and for math exceeding, we had 2 out of 3 points. So that's great news for both, but for ELA especially. And that's how our ratings, our accountability ratings are calculated. There's lots more data I could share. I thought this was at least an overview, but if you have any other questions, I can certainly get you more information.
Right. And so what we do next with this is that we, have looked at this as a district leadership team to really look at what are the district-wide patterns and then what are the school-by-school patterns. Each principal is looking at these, at the data with their individual building-based leadership teams. They're also kind of really examine the current data in light of what their school plans are for the year. They'll adjust those plans accordingly, to take advantage of this newfound data. And then, again, we kind of move into that season of kind of the next cycle of accountability.
Well, I really appreciate it, Gail. Very detailed, very thorough. You've done a tremendous amount of work in a short amount of time since everything was released and then the accountability was released. You've had a busy week.
That's fine.
Well, thank you. Do any of the members have any questions for Gail about anything in the presentation?
I just have a comment. We still don't have the approved or recommended curriculum in science, is that correct, by the state?
Correct. They have not, well, the state is trying, they went to the legislature to try to get an extension on when we needed to have the high-quality science materials in. Right now, it's 2025. We won't know until spring if we got that waiver or not. There are very few on the list for us to even look at. However, we're going to start looking just because we've got to start looking. So we're going to be looking at Open SciEd, which is an open resource for the middle and the high school at least, just to have a presentation on it in April so we can start looking at what has been approved, and we're hoping we get the extension through the legislature, and then we can really start doing some pilots, but there's not enough out there to pilot right now.
Yeah, I think it's interesting they started assessing science before they had a recommended curriculum. And it makes you wonder what skill and standards they're using to base the assessment on when they don't have a recommended curriculum.
Yeah, well, they're using the science standards, but, yeah, you're right, I know.
Any other questions from the school committee? All right, well, thank you very much, Gail. Dr. Cummings, do you have anything else in your superintendent's report?
No, I think that was plenty. Thank you.
All right. So we're moving on to consent agenda. Is there a motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent to approve consent agenda items CA1A, CA2A, CA2B, and CA2C?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion?
Just a quick note, I don't know just how thorough the minutes need to be because it's already super thorough, but just on my summary of just what I said, I just reported out on the nutrition subcommittee and reviewed the meal debt plan. I just didn't know if it was like, if that was something that could be added or if just the reference to the YouTube channel link is sufficient enough. That's all. Okay.
If it's, I'm not sure how we would amend the minutes. I'm not sure if it would require a vote from the committee or not.
Oh, okay. I don't want to be too difficult. It's just, I just remembered just summarizing that, and I just wasn't sure of how important that was to include. That's all.
Again, if the committee would want us to add it, we can certainly do that. I wouldn't want to amend the submitted minutes without the approval of the committee, so I would have to ask, actually, Diane, since you probably know the rules the best, how we would do that.
I'd just remove the minutes and make the changes and present them next.
Sorry.
You guys would like us to do?
Well, it's up to the committee. I don't really have a preference. I'm fine with the YouTube reference. Under the circumstances, I don't think it's that big of a deal.
All right,
I
we'll
was
be
just
more
curious.
attentive to it in the future.
Thank you. And no worries, it's already a fantastic job every time.
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. On to the budget report. Karen?
Good evening. Expenditures for the 6 months ended December 31st, 2023, total $14,485,242, and that's 39.95% of our budget. Expenditures and encumbrances total $31,279,641, and that's 86.27% of our budget.
Thank you. Any questions for Karen or Pete?
I'm sorry, I have
Sure.
one question. Is it customary for you to include the salaries upfront before they're actually paid out?
Well, when we want to encumber them because we know almost certainly they're going to be paid. And yes, it shows that that money is not available. But, we're reporting both what we've actually paid and what we are encumbering for the future, yes. I do agree there are times when maybe those salaries won't materialize, but for the most part, they will. So that's how we've done it, but if there's some way else.
And then the reporting strategy, when it doesn't materialize, it's not a line item. It's just at the end, when you close out the budget for the calendar year?
Right, it drops into our surplus, the
Okay.
money that doesn't get spent.
But it doesn't show line item, this from salaries, this from whatever.
No, not when we just do the total surplus, it's just one number.
Okay.
Any other questions for Karen? All right, thank you. So we're on to school committee business. The first item is not a voting item. This month, we will be discussing the school calendar for next year, so that, I guess we should have listed in the agenda as the 24-25 school calendar, because we're not discussing this year's calendar. So there's three things to look at in your packet. So Pete made a version 1. This is for next year with a start after Labor Day. Version 2 is a start before Labor Day. And the third attachment is a draft from RIDE about their suggested school calendar, which it appears that most school committees are just doing whatever they want. So it's not a requirement, and people kind of take it under consideration, then do what they want to do. So Pete, so we're just having a discussion from the committee. We will put this on next month's agenda as well. So Pete, can you go over a couple highlights about next year with Election Day, Primary Day, whatever you want to share about the two drafts in our packet?
Sure. So it is a election year, and so we are required, and we've been back and forth on this, we are required to have Primary Day off, which is, I believe, September 10 this year. So that's going to be a professional development day, and Election Day, obviously. So the big difference between the two calendars is starting before Labor Day or starting after Labor Day. And I will call your attention to a couple of things because they are similar except for those two pieces. So in starting after Labor Day, our seniors need to do 170 school days. That's the rule in Rhode Island before graduation. So starting after Labor Day this year, we'll push graduation to being Thursday, June 12th. If we started before Labor Day, which would be 3 days before Labor Day, which we have not done in recent memory in Narragansett, it has happened, but not recently, that would bring graduation back to June 5th. You know, obviously, if we start after Labor Day, if there were no snow days, we would end on June 18th. June 19th is now a state holiday, so then if there were any snow days, it would push us into that last week, full week of June. If you started before Labor Day, the last day of school would be with no snow days on June 12th. And even if you had several snow days, you would be ending before that June 19th holiday. Two other things that I'll call your attention to. One is that the way that the winter holidays fall is that the 23rd would typically be a day that we would be at school. However, since that 23rd is a Monday, you know, we did include it as part of that full week, so people would have a full week off for you know, their Christmas break. And again, that's up to the committee if they wanted to switch that to students being in school. So I wanted to highlight that for you. And the second piece is that you know, that March is you know, certainly a long time. We typically would break that up with a PD day. But because it is an election year, that PD day will fall in the September 10th rather than in the March day. All right. Other than that, you know, all of the RIDE identified holidays and the holidays that we have traditionally done are in there.
Well, I just have a couple comments that I'd love to hear from the rest of the committee. I'm really glad in both versions you put December 23rd as a day off. If you have that as a school day, kids coming to school just on Monday, I think you're going to have a lot of teachers call out, a lot of kids call out. I think that's really going to be a lost learning day. So I strongly recommend that you keep, just because it falls on a Monday, keep that as a no school day. And then my only other, you know, again, I'm one of 5 and don't have any kids in the school district, work in the district, but we haven't gone to school before Labor Day in like over 10 years. And so I do not think that that would be very well received by the majority of people if we are back in school before Labor Day. We know this particular year we had excessive heat. We know that August and early September is very, very hot. June can be hot, but nothing like the heat and humidity that we experienced this year, first week of September. I also worry that if we did the before Labor Day, ending June 12th seems really early, and so I worry about people that have young kids with childcare and stuff before summer camps get rolling, and that just seems really early historically to be getting out, like June 12th. I would worry about people with childcare issues and all sorts of things. And I think, June 18th, you're still getting out really early, and if we get 1 or 2 snow days, June 19th, we're closed, and even if it spills into, a closing of, last day of the 23rd or 24th, it's still early, because I remember many of school years where we have gone, June 27th, June 28th. So again, would love to hear from the rest of the committee, and then we will kind of mull it over. We'll bring it back next month, see if we can get some input from some other stakeholders, but I'd love to hear any thoughts from any of the committee members.
Well, I think you really covered it well. And, thank you for both of these versions being presented to us. It's very well organized and very easy to follow, including what I think is pretty funny, the RIDE 2024-2025 school calendar, because you hit the nail on the head. It's here it is, and have at it. And I agree, just from personal experience in the Narragansett school system some years ago, going back to school before Labor Day, and I know I wasn't too excited. I know we had sent out survey results in the past, and I believe, if memory serves me correct, that there tended to be a more favorability to start after Labor Day as well. And with the inclusion of all of the holidays, the vacations, it seems like we're actually adding more, even though we're not. It just seems like it, because it's an election year, and we still have the full February vacation, full April vacation on version 1, actually both versions, which I like. Not too much differences between the two versions. It's pretty much just starting before or after Labor Day and taking Election Day and all these other things into consideration. So I personally like starting after Labor Day as well, but I know it's not a voting item, so I'm curious to hear what any of the other school committee members have to say as well.
So I agree wholeheartedly with the December 23rd being a day off. That at best is going to be a low-quality learning day. I still think I favor the after Labor Day, because another aspect of that is a lot of these kids, particularly in high school, that's their last weekend to work usually. So there's a lot of end of the summer activities. Work-related and, party-related. But yeah, we'll discuss this and we'll think on it in next month. That's all I have to say.
That is feedback that we have received in the past from the local businesses, because traditionally, we have a lot of Narragansett students that are working in our area businesses, our area, the beach, the ice cream shops, all that. The kids usually like to have a little time off, and then if they are on a sports team, they've got those summer practices. So it moves the whole timeline up. So if the kids have school the last week of August and their sports practices are starting, they may take a week off, then they may tell the local business, like August 10th, August 15th, like, I'm done, I need a week to relax before school, whereas, and it's hard, still a busy tourism time, and our businesses that are relying on, their students and employees to get them through those big, important 3 months. We have heard that, like, please don't do that, because we can't staff our business the last week of August if you're back in school.
One of the busiest weekends in the summer usually.
I'd also add to that, we have taken a more proactive approach, and we do have a policy in place for snow days, distance learning, the unexpected emergency closures. So I also think it's great to have that policy in place that, that while version 2 may have us getting out on like June 12th versus June 18th, there isn't as much of a concern with getting out at June 18th when we have such a great policy in place.
I also think it's pretty funny that RIDE forgot about primary day. So when you look at the RIDE one, I don't see any notations about school being closed Tuesday, September 10th. So if we're not voting in the schools and we want to have school, we're told that we can't. So, but I think it's funny that RIDE didn't even make a notation, like they forgot about primary day.
The statewide school calendar is still a fairly new concept, right? And so I think they may not be aware of all of the wrinkles that go into it.
Diplomatic.
So Jen or Diane, did you guys want to share any opinions or comments or questions?
I agree with everything that's been said, and I agree with starting after Labor Day, especially when Labor Day is so early this year, on the 2nd.
Yeah, Labor Day is early. I teach at a school district that always starts before Labor Day. And I like that I have a full week under my belt with the kids before Labor Day. However, my kids are on a totally different schedule, so it doesn't really matter as long as our big weeks are, together, right, February and April. The other thing too is, just thinking about really teachers are so invested in their students. If you can start after Labor Day, I just think like psychologically and anxiety-wise, it's just so much better for them. I do see the benefit because I work in a district for that, but plus you said, my family's business owners too, yeah, we would lose kids even earlier in August, and really, we're still pretty busy through Labor Day. So, I agree with everything everybody said.
So let's add this as a voting item for next month. And Pete, I'm sure you will share our feedback and the versions with the teachers union and let them get input from their members as well.
Yes, will do.
Okay, and we're not making any other dramatic changes, so. Okay, all right, very good. All right, so we have two more business items. Number 2, is there a motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and the director of finance and administration to approve the purchase of laptops and docks for teachers at Narragansett High School from Dell Technologies at a total cost of $96,502.25?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Good evening. This is normally the time of year I come to you because Dell's fiscal year ends at the end of January. So this is when we can get the best pricing possible. This is part of our 4-year teacher refresh. So every year, every 4 years, we have either high school, elementary school, middle school, or admin and support staff. That way we have a cycle. The laptop expected life is 4 years, so we're on that expected life, and we can project costs just based on the number of teachers and admin and support staff we have. Once again, every time with teachers, we give them the option of a normal clamshell laptop or a 2-in-1 device. We don't want to just say, let's go 2-in-1 for everyone, because they're about $300 more expensive based on the screen and the technology in them. So we surveyed all of the teachers, got responses. This year, the model is changing to a newer model, so there was a slight increase in price, but we were able to, normally when they change models, it's usually a 10% increase. We were able to keep that down at about 7% for both of them. And this is the best pricing that we're gonna get, and this is prior to all the other schools and districts going out and trying to buy these devices.
We really appreciate you being proactive and really finding out what the teachers really want to is important.
Yeah, and it's very helpful for us to get them in early too, so that we can plan our summer and prior to when we started doing this, I would say 6 or 7 years ago, we sometimes had devices show up the third week of August, and we had literally a week to get them ready. So this is beneficial for the district cost-wise and beneficial for our department as well.
Are there any questions?
Again, also echoing, really appreciate the proactive approach here. Very smart, very smart. My only question is, you mentioned a price increase with the new model versus the old. I was just wondering what makes the new model different from the old?
The older models have kind of this black plastic case. The new ones are all silver hard metal, so they're much more durable. The processors, obviously, they continue to improve. So these are i7 Intel processors, and the RAM is a little bit more, and the memory is a little bit more. So even with all of that, we're still able to keep it at about a 7% increase.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. And the last item for tonight, is there a motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and the director of finance and administration to approve the purchase of Chromebooks and laptops for the student one-to-one device rollout from Dell Technologies for grades 1, 5, and 9 at a total cost of $64,696.50?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
So this is the same type of thing. We're sticking with the 2-in-1 devices as students enter first grade. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback from those first grade teachers that it's a great transition device for the students, going from iPads and touch devices to learning that keyboard. So we stayed with the 2-in-1, and since the model didn't change, we were able to get a 4% decrease as opposed to prior year, because they still have supplemental parts, so they're able to still get them out prior to everyone buying them as the year goes on. So we were able to get a 4% decrease on those. And the non-2-in-1s, we were able to actually get a 20% decrease in cost per unit buying them this early.
That's excellent news. Any questions or comments?
Just echoing, just a lot of shared sentiment on this committee in the past, just how wonderful it is that we as a district are able to provide a one-to-one program. And I just think it's just speaks volumes that we're taking, again, the proactive approach to provide these resources to students and ensuring that we're providing the best education possible. So again, thank you for all the hard work and presenting this to us.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Now I've lost track. Did we vote?
No.
Okay. Okay, so any other comments or questions? No? So all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any communications that anyone wants to mention?
I just wanted to say one thing about the retirees in the elementary school. I know it's weird to have retirees like mid-year, but shout out to Miss Patty, who I know serviced both of my kids at one point. Just a wonderful, wonderful person, and especially during COVID, just really a godsend. And I was able to meet the new secretary, and she is just the sweetest person. My kids love her. She already knows most everybody by name when they walk in. So I think that's great. I think it shows, our community and how tight-knit it is, and that's all.
Great, thank you. Diane?
I just have one question on the elementary school report, where the elementary school was selected to be part of a national assessment of NAEP. And I'm always curious, we're a small district, we're in the smallest state on the edge of the ocean. How do we get selected for, I would think we'd be,
We do get selected literally every year. I do not know how we get selected.
Every year.
Yes,
it's just random?
it is, yes. somehow the random always hits us. And, you know, again, you're exactly right. Perhaps they need a certain profile of the smallest district in the smallest state to complete their overall profile of America, and perhaps we're just that one unique piece that they need.
All right, any other communications? All right, so we are back here on Valentine's Day for our budget presentation. So we are back on Wednesday, February 14th at 7 o'clock, and that is when Pete will present the first iteration of the budget to us. The budget workshops will follow after that, followed by we'll vote on the budget in March, and then we will have our meetings with the town council. So budget presentation, Valentine's Day, hoping for a chocolate, Lauren. I do like the pretzels, but hoping for chocolate.
And I will call attention of the committee, so there is an adjustment that has been published on our website and with the Secretary of State. It's a slight adjustment to our starting times for the budget workshops, so they will start at 6 rather than 5. And they will be held down here so they can be televised this year. And so that's just a slight adjustment to what we have done in previous years.
I just want to mention that is a highly religious day for Catholics. It falls on Ash Wednesday.
It is, yes. We've had meetings on Ash Wednesday before.
But that
and so
early?
The 14th is just our regular school committee.
Oh, you were talking about the budget. Okay,
Yes.
sorry.
Yes.
All right, I was gonna say that's
So our
early,
regular meeting is
okay.
at 7.
Are we going to do the giant table on the floor here? as we-
Similar to what we did with the town council,
Like the joint meeting?
yes.
Okay.
So just no dinner. So for February, we will be here just for our regular, usual February business meeting. I think it is good that we're having our budget workshops televised. Hopefully, we'll get a little more input. So we will be televised and just sitting on the lower level.
Right, and we will set them up. It may not be as big a table as
Yeah.
we had in the meeting with the town council, but we will set it up so that it's accessible to anyone that may want to view from afar.
And that will be great to try to encourage with stakeholders to come, because the budget workshops, there's so much great information and back and forth and dialogue. That's a great meeting for people to come to. So hopefully, and there's 2 of them for sure. Okay. All right, so with that, is there a motion to adjourn at 8:17?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?